On the evening of Wednesday, March 22nd, 2006, members of the 4th Street Church of Christ in Selmer, Tennessee arrived for their regular midweek service. Their minister was expected at the pulpit. He did not arrive. When congregation members walked to the church parsonage, the residents provided to their minister and his family, they found the home quiet. Too quiet. They went inside, and in the bedroom, they found 31-year-old Matthew Winkler, deceased from a gunshot wound to his back. His wife was gone. His 3 daughters were gone. The family's minivan was gone. And in the hours that followed, a case that opened as a possible abduction would become one of the most closely examined, most publicly debated criminal proceedings in the modern history of the American South, raising questions about what courts can measure, what communities can see, and what happens inside a marriage when the front door closes. This is the Mary Winkler case, and we are going to go through every piece of it. I am your host. You are watching The Crime Scene. Let's get into it. Selmer, Tennessee is the county seat of McNairy County, located approximately 80 miles east of Memphis. In 2006, the population was roughly 4,500 people. It is the kind of community where residents know one another by name, where civic life and church life are tightly interwoven, and where a minister and his family occupy a particular kind of public position. They are not simply residents. They are representatives. Their conduct, visible conduct, the conduct that anyone in the congregation can observe, reflects on the institution they serve. The 4th Street Church of Christ was one of the anchor institutions of that community. The Churches of Christ denomination is a Protestant tradition with deep roots in the American South. It emphasizes scripture, community accountability, and the visible, consistent conduct of its members. The minister's family, in many congregations of this tradition, participates in that visibility as a matter of course. The wife attends events, she organizes, she is present. She is part of what the congregation sees when it looks at its leadership. Matthew Winkler had been appointed as the pulpit minister at the 4th Street Church of Christ in Selmer, not long before March of 2006. He was 31 years old. By consistent accounts from congregation members, colleagues, and community figures who spoke to investigators and to the media. In the aftermath of his death, he was described as energetic, warm, and committed to his ministry. He was liked. He was active. He was, as far as anyone looking in from the outside could determine, exactly the kind of minister a congregation like this would be proud to call their own. Standing beside him at every service, every community gathering, every church function was his wife, Mary. To everyone who observed them, they were the picture of a solid, faithful ministerial family. 3 daughters, a well-maintained parsonage, had insulated them from suspicion. The first instinct of their congregation was to worry that someone had done something to them. It did not occur to anyone who knew them that the answer might be closer to home. An Amber Alert was issued for the 3 children. The family's gray minivan was flagged as missing. Law enforcement began working outward from Selmer, contacting surrounding agencies and tracking any information that might indicate where the family had gone. What was known at that point from the evidence at the scene? Matthew Winkler had sustained a gunshot wound to his back from a 12-gauge shotgun that was kept in the home. The forensic evidence indicated the shot had been fired from a relatively close distance. There was no evidence of forced entry to the parsonage. There was no evidence of any outside intruder. The evidence at the scene was consistent with a shooting that had taken place inside the home by someone who was inside the home. But Mary and the children were gone, and until law enforcement located them, the circumstances remained open. What had actually happened inside that parsonage on the morning of March 22nd is documented through about 2 primary sources: Mary Winkler's voluntary statements to law enforcement at the time of her arrest and her testimony during the trial that began more than a year later. According to those statements, an argument had occurred on the evening of March 21st. Mary said she and Matthew had argued. She indicated that the argument related, at least in part, to the financial situation. In her initial voluntary statement to Alabama law enforcement officers on March 23rd, she was recorded as saying, "It was just building up to this point. I was just tired of it. I guess I just got to a point and snapped." She also said in that same statement that she had argued with her husband and that the shooting had followed. She also described Matthew Winkler, in that initial statement, as a mighty fine person. That phrase would become one of the more discussed elements of the prosecution's case. The argument from the prosecution was straightforward. A woman who had spent years in fear of her husband, who described the kind of sustained abuse that Mary would later testify to in court, would not characterize him to police officers within hours of the shooting as a fine person. The prosecution used it to argue that the abuse narrative was constructed after the fact. The defense offered a counter-argument that is not without clinical support, that a person who has been subjected to sustained coercive control over many years may simultaneously fear their partner and maintain positive feelings toward them, may describe them using language that reflects the version of that person they were told to present to the world, and may do so even in the immediate aftermath of an act of extreme stress. This is documented in research on intimate partner violence and coercive control. It is not a rare or unusual psychological pattern, but the jury would have to weigh all of it. We will get there. Within 24 hours of the discovery of Matthew Winkler's body, law enforcement had a critical development. A gray minivan matching the description of the Winklers' missing vehicle was reported in Orange Beach, Alabama, approximately 340 miles south of Selmer, along the Gulf Coast. Officers from the Orange Beach Police Department located the vehicle. They approached it following standard protocol for a situation in which they did not yet have complete information about the circumstances or the people inside. They directed the driver to exit the vehicle. The driver was Mary Winkler. Inside the vehicle with her were her 3 daughters, Patricia, Mary Alice, and Brianna, unharmed. Officers placed Mary into custody. The 3 children were removed from the vehicle by officers and were assessed. Law enforcement then conducted a search of the vehicle. Mary Winkler did not resist. She cooperated with the officers who approached her, and she agreed to speak with investigators. What followed was a voluntary statement, given without an attorney present, without invocation of her right to remain silent, at least in the initial conversation. In that statement, she acknowledged that she had shot her husband. She said that an argument had preceded the event. She said it had something to do with his constant criticism of her. She used both of the phrases already cited, that it had been building up, and that she guessed she had snapped. She also, in that same conversation, referred to Matthew as a mighty fine person. Investigators documented the statement. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation was notified. On March 25, 2006, Mary Winkler waived her right to an extradition hearing. She was transported back to Selmer and held at the McNairy County Jail. Tennessee officials filed charges of first-degree murder. On June 12, 2006, a grand jury formally indicted Mary Winkler on the charge of first-degree murder. She remained in custody until August 15, 2006, when she was released on bail set at $750,000. The community of Selmer and a national media audience that had begun following the case was waiting for the trial, waiting for the full account of what had happened and why. That account would come in April of 2007, more than 13 months after Matthew Winkler's death. Jury selection for the trial of Mary Winkler began in April of 2007. McNairy County Circuit Court Clerk Ronnie Brooks acknowledged to reporters at the time, "We've had some murders in this county, but nothing this sensationalized. It kind of caught us off guard." a more accurate accounting of what the evidence had established. Matthew Winkler's family did not express satisfaction. They had already filed, prior to sentencing, a $2 million wrongful death civil suit against Mary Winkler. And they had already initiated proceedings in family court to terminate Mary's parental rights and seek permanent custody of the three girls. The conclusion of the criminal proceedings did not conclude the legal story of Mary Winkler. In many ways, the years immediately following the trial were defined by the dispute over custody of Patricia, Mary Alice, and Brianna. Following Matthew's death and Mary's arrest, the three daughters had been placed with their paternal grandparents, Dan and Diane Winkler, as a temporary arrangement during the period of Mary's incarceration and pretrial detention. That arrangement had extended through the trial and through the sentencing. Dan and Diane Winkler were not seeking to maintain temporary custody. They filed legal proceedings in family court to terminate Mary's parental rights entirely and to adopt the three girls themselves. Termination of parental rights is one of the most significant outcomes available in family law. Courts apply a high legal standard before granting it, and the proceedings that follow a termination petition are typically extended and closely contested. Mary Winkler filed a counterpetition seeking custody of her daughters. In March of 2007, before the criminal trial had concluded, she had already initiated the custody proceedings. They continued in parallel with a criminal case and then continued after it. In 2008, a family court judge awarded full custody of the three daughters to Mary Winkler. Her custody attorney, Rachel Putnam, confirmed that Mary had collected the girls from Dan and Diane Winkler's home and that they would be living with her near McMinnville, Tennessee, approximately 60 miles southeast of Nashville. Putnam said Mary was absolutely overjoyed. The custody outcome did not fully resolve the conflict between Mary and the Winkler family. In subsequent years, Mary alleged that a trust fund established for the benefit of her daughters had been misappropriated during the period the girls were living with their grandparents. A judge subsequently ordered the grandparents to repay funds from that trust. The wrongful death civil suit continued through its own separate legal track. Mary Winkler returned to work at a dry cleaning establishment in McMinnville, the same position she had held before the trial. This was confirmed by her defense attorney, Steve Ferres, at the time of her release. She and her daughters relocated to a home in the Smithville area, made available through the assistance of a minister in that community. In an interview Mary gave in 2010, she described life with her daughters in measured terms. She said, "They understand that they need to do a little bit more around the house, they need to help out, and they've done a great job." She described the household as finding its rhythm. She said her daughters had adapted. She acknowledged the ongoing difficulty of the relationship with the Winkler family, while also acknowledging their role in caring for the girls during the period of Mary's incarceration. Patricia, Mary Alice, and Brianna Winkler, who were 8, 6, and 1-year-old at the time of their father's death, have grown up in the years since. They lost their father. They were involved, through no choice of their own, in a custody proceeding that played out in courtrooms over several years while they were still children. Whatever they have made of all of that, and whatever they continue to make of it as they move into adulthood, belongs to them and not to the public record. Now let me take some time to address what this case actually reveals, because I think the documentary record opens up into something that is worth understanding carefully. The question that was asked most often in the immediate aftermath of the verdict was this: how did no one know? It is worth spending time with that question, because the answer, when you examine it carefully, is not as simple as the question implies. The Mary Winkler case unfolded in a specific community, a religious community in a small southern town, in which the minister and his family occupied a particular kind of public position. And what that position does, structurally, is make the family highly visible in certain separate from the criminal case and the custody proceedings. The relationship between Mary and her former in-laws has been described in the available record as strained, with moments of tentative engagement around the shared concern for the daughters. In a report from 2008 following the custody hearing at which Mary was awarded full custody, the parties were described as having embraced, an indication that however significant the conflict between them remained, there was some capacity for acknowledgement of their shared connection to those 3 children. Let me speak to you directly for a moment before we close out. This is a case I return to because it raises questions that do not have clean answers, and I think that is worth acknowledging honestly rather than papering over. When I examine what the jury heard, and I have gone through this record carefully, the trial testimony, the documented statements, the expert accounts, the physical evidence, I think the jury was doing something genuinely difficult. They were being asked to evaluate on the basis of evidence, something that is by its nature resistant to external evaluation, the interior experience of a marriage. There was no physical documentation of the abuse Mary described. No police reports, no medical records, no photographs, no prior disclosures to a counselor or a family member that would have created a contemporaneous record. What there was her testimony, detailed, consistent in its broad framework if sometimes difficult to verify in its specifics, and the observation from her own sister that she could not remember hearing Mary laugh. Weighed against that, a financial motive that was documented by bank records and bank employee testimony, a deadline that was real, an initial statement to police in which Mary acknowledged shooting her husband and did not initially describe fear or abuse as the cause, 8 hours of deliberation, a verdict of voluntary manslaughter. I cannot tell you that verdict is definitively correct or definitively incorrect. I do not think anyone who was not inside that marriage, and perhaps not even those who were, can say that with certainty. What I can tell you is that this case draws sustained attention not primarily because of its verdict, but because of what it surfaces about visibility and invisibility, about the gap between how a life looks from the outside and what it contains. Matthew Winkler's family suffered a loss that is real and permanent. Diane and Dan Winkler lost a son. 3 girls lost a father. Those losses do not have a legal remedy. No sentence addresses them. No verdict speaks to them adequately. That is the honest truth of how the law works, and it is something that the Winkler family communicated clearly through every statement they made during the proceedings. At the same time, the trial raised questions that belong in the broader public conversation about what communities can see when they are looking only at presentations rather than realities, about the conditions under which people in particular roles and particular communities feel able or unable to ask for help, about how the legal system evaluates experiences that leave no external documentation. Those questions do not get answered by the verdict in this specific case. They remain active. They are present in communities and households right now, in situations that look fine from the outside and may or may not be fine in reality. If you know someone whose life looks fine from the outside but something about it gives you pause, that pause is worth paying attention to. Not with assumptions, not with intervention that is not yours to make, but with presence and with availability. Sometimes the most important thing a person on the outside of a difficult situation can offer is simply not pretending they did not notice. Resources exist for people navigating situations of intimate partner abuse or financial fraud. The National Domestic Violence Hotline can be reached at 1-800-797-233 and online at thehotline.org. Financial fraud reporting can be done through the Federal Trade Commission at reportfraud.ftc.gov. Those numbers and links are in the description of this video. That is the full documented account of the Mary Winkler case, the events of March 2006, the investigation that followed, the trial in April of 2007, the verdict, the sentencing, the custody proceedings, and the aftermath that the people involved have continued to navigate in the years since. Thank you for being here on the crime scene. This channel is built on the premise that real cases deserve real attention, factual, measured, and honest engagement with what the record actually shows and what it means. Not dramatization, not sensationalism. The evidence, the proceedings, and the questions that remain. If this documentary added something to your understanding of this case, I would genuinely like to hear from you. Leave a comment below with your thoughts, your questions, or your perspective. I read them. Your engagement with the material makes this channel better and keeps this community thoughtful. If you are watching this and you are not yet a subscriber to The Crime Scene, This is a good moment to change that. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you are with us for the next one. And if this video was worth your time, a like goes a long way in making sure other people can find this content when they are looking for it. I will see you in the next documentary.